talking about launching a radio program or a podcast or something creative. And I've got a wonderful marketer, a creator, and an author with me today. Hello, Sueanne.
Hi, Dave.
So, Sueanne, if you were to be starting a radio program or a podcast, what would be three or four things that you would start to do? What's your process of thinking and getting it moving forward?
I'd start off with the audience. What is it the audience wants to hear? Given that we are in a world of technology and I hate to say it, instant gratification sometimes, it's what is it that's going to hold the audience's attention for 15 or 20 minutes? That would be number one. Number two would be, what is that overall arching theme of the show that would feed into what the audience wants to hear? And so what would be those topics that resonate with the audience? And then what would be ways of building in some humor and fun and some education into the program? So those would be probably the top three things I would probably consider. And then once I've got a sense of what those would be, it would be, okay, what is the marketing strategy for this? And what is the goals for this? And what is the time frame to get this going? And then after that, it's what is that brand that I want to build around it?
Fantastic. So this is what's really great. I wanted to have this session with you today because what you've just laid out is some really great questions to create something that might grow and actually be of incredible value. Someone like me would be the other way, say, let's just do it. Let's just have a chat. Let's just record it. Let's just put it up and let's just move on. And so wouldn't be really thinking about who to talk to. Would just want to probably talk about something that we're both interested in. We'd be able to lay the tracks and it would be one of the ways to get started. That's partially driven because my driver is a people person. So I like to do things with people. And so it doesn't even need to be very focused or very clear. Now, when I worked in businesses, some of my best businesses I worked with were with people that were creative and had big visions immediately. So they would immediately say, let's be one of the top 10 podcast or radio programs in Canada. And then they would go do research of the top 10, and then they would come up with the marketing, the niche, the focus, and then they would sort of come back with me and they would give me some of that information and then say, shall we do it? And then I would say yes, and then we'd do it. And that's how I started about 10 or 11 businesses with people who are what are called drivers. These are people who are high drivers, high Ds, action oriented. And often these people get stuck in their own business because they're the best at everything, but they're not very good with working with people. And so by working with me, at least we would create a lot, we get a lot done. And then we knew we needed to have another person, sort of like you, that would be putting everything in order, making sure everything's structured, making sure the money gets collected, making sure that the business could flow. And that's where in entrepreneurship or in projects, you really do need to have 3 or 4 different people with different types of action dynamic, with different types of way of seeing the world. And so when you hear this, what's your reaction to my little diatribe about the way that a project can get started and the fact that different people see things differently, and especially on a team, you really do need different people with different skills to move it forward.
What I'm hearing is you need people with different strengths. So they're going to be bringing different strengths and they're going to be bringing it from their experiences as well. And so collectively as a group, as you're building things and as you're leveraging those strengths, you want to ensure that it's happening spontaneously and it's happening with a degree of fun, but also with accountability, because you don't want to be building this where you've only got, where it turns out that only a couple people have bought into the idea and then there are a couple who aren't really sold on the idea. Everybody has to be accountable into the idea and really, really, truly want to make it happen. So from that perspective, if you've got that collective, yes, let's do it, and you're leveraging each other's strengths, and you're making incremental steps forward, because there is going to be a lot of dialogue back and forth, what someone likes, what someone doesn't like. Does this work? Does this not work? What are the risks here? If we don't do this, what are the ramifications? If we do it, knowing the risks that we have, what's going to be the outcomes? And so, when you've got that perspective and you've got that active contribution from everybody on the team, then the successes are high.
So let me go through the 5 questions that allow a business to grow. So the first question is, can we get a big why? Why are we doing this? Is that why exciting? Now, there can be different levels of why. Why could be starting a podcast, to develop the skill or the experience. Another why would be, wow, to share fantastic information to really serve humanity. Another why could be, because every dollar we make in Canada, we're going to be building orphanages in Ethiopia. And so the why can really get the team excited. The why is what is motivating and can be inspiring and uplifting. The next question is what? What are we going to do? And getting clarity. What specifically are we going to do? Is it going to be a radio show every day, or is it going to be that 1-hour spot from 9 till 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning? And then who are we going to target? They're going to be the target audience? Yet who are we going to have as guests? Who's going to be speaking? So who? It's really great, because if you focus on why, what, and who, that's considered the constructive cycle of the I Ching, which is from the Book of Changes, which helps people get in flow. So you go from why, what, who, and then when. When are we going to start? You actually went through a number of these questions as part of your marketing strategy, as part of your creative process. And then what you notice is, by asking these 4 W's, you don't need to ask how, because so often people will get stopped in their tracks. They won't get started because they'll keep asking themselves, how am I going to do it? How am I going to podcast? How am I going to broadcast? How am I going to record? How? And they don't even get started because they get overwhelmed. Because that how question for about 7/8 of the population is like chopping their self-esteem, their self-confidence down, so they never get started. And so when you hear these questions, what counter question might you have?
Well, when you're dealing with those whys, you also have to bring with it a sense of, and you have to keep asking yourself, and it's an evolution as well. You do have to keep asking yourself, is this really truly the real why? And when you ask those questions, is it meeting the objectives? Is it meeting the strategies that you've put forward as a collective group? And is it meeting the revenue targets that you've put in place? And is it answering the risks that you've identified? Is it answering the long-term and the short-term goals that you've put in place? The hows probably tend to befuddle people, because it's asking you to start from a place that you don't really know where to start from. And that's where sometimes people get hamstrung, because they think, oh my gosh, where do I start from? And so the whys just allows you to get very specific, and the whys are not set in stone, because you can still refine them, and you can keep refining them until you really get to that point where you know definitively that this is the approach you're going to take.
So let's go through that. What would be a couple of the whys that you would want to do this? Why would you want to start a podcast or a radio program? Could you share with me 1, 2, or 3 whys? Maybe even be spontaneous, because it's funny. Before I was asking the question, I immediately giggled a little bit inside about what are some of my whys.
Well, for me, my why to start a podcast it would be to, and again, I don't want to make this too didactic or anything like that, but for me, it's talking with people and interviewing people to hear their stories and how their stories can inspire, and also how I can inspire others as well. So, but mostly it's, what are those stories that will inspire, that will motivate the listeners to either try it or make some incremental change in their life.
Cool. So I think my why right now is to have some medium to communicate with inspiring people and to inspire more people to live an inspiring life. Is that too much inspiration? So yeah, that's what mine is right now. And so who would you want as a target market? Who would you want to, what type of listeners would excite you, or that you would like to zoom in on?
That's a big ocean.
Uh-oh.
Definitely women. Women who are entrepreneurs, and women who have affected change. That's where I would start right now. And yeah.
And do you have 3 or 4 women that you would love to interview just randomly? Are there people out there that starting out or in the middle or at the height? Do you want to share 3 or 4 names?
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that a great question?
That is a great question. As I'm a writer as well, so I would like to have on our show Chandra Rhimes. She's written some really great shows. And who else would I want to have on the show? I have to think about this one.
Well, questions that you have to think about are probably pretty good questions.
Yes, they are. So I would say Marianne Williamson.
Hello, Marianne. I'm going to hashtag Marianne.
Yeah, I would like to get her perspective on her spiritual things and how she's evolved with that.
Course of Miracles.
That's
what she studied for decades.
For decades?
And taught.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is a woman that I'm thinking of. I can see her face, but I don't remember her name. And she's a speaker. She's a Black woman, and she speaks about diversity and inclusion, not only in the workplace, but just in life in general. And I wish I could remember her name. But yes, women who are actively talking about inclusion and diversity. And I would also like to get Native Americans. I would like to interview Native Americans, understand what that experience has been like. And I'd also see what are the next steps for them.
Great. Well, I think we've created a nice little template on moving forward. And this is something that I wanted to do for any of the creatives out there, to see how a collaboration, you look for perhaps people who have some different skills. I guess if I was to have my magic wand, I'd love to potentially find somebody who loves to do video editing or different types of video communication. That would be a great partner to have in this type of adventure. Somebody who would love to have impact. And as Sueanne is saying, that impact on women and change makers in the feminine side. again, part of what I've been doing recently is the Voice of Men 360, the Global Dialogue Foundation. These are organizations that are promoting unity and diversity and communication and dialogue. And I'd love to infuse that energy in there, that it's often about maybe speaking with people that at first glance we don't really have much in common, yet after having a conversation, we start to build these beautiful bridges. And these bridges are part of the change as we move from 2020 to 2021 to 2025 to 2030. There's going to be many changes, and wouldn't it be cool to be part of the positive change, the impact for good? And
Mhm.
so that's some of the nice little brainstorming, or this could be seen as brainstorming from one perspective, often a male perspective. How about it could also be from heart circles, or it could be from trust circles. If when you hear some of those words, Sueanne, what possibility could come into play on a potential name or two of a podcast or radio show that could be at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning?
9 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Trust circle. Hmm. The words that I'm hearing or feeling, I'm feeling sun, I'm feeling home, I'm feeling um, unity. Those are the three words I'm feeling.
It's great for people to see what we just demonstrated, and that is the patience to allow people to actually share. What Suanne's doing is she's tapping into her intuition, and she's inviting words into her energetic sphere, and she has the patience and also the confidence to let it come in. Often when we're in a group of 5 or 6 or 8 people, we don't give people the opportunity to process the information. And so there's different processing speeds, like we talked about, different dynamics. There's people who are precise. They're looking for the precision. There's others that could have, in the 7 seconds that you were quiet, Suen, there's people that could have given you a full business plan. And then there's people like myself that are looking to bridge and almost be a translator to allow everybody to have an opportunity to express. And so we'll continue to explore. And what's beautiful about it is that in many ways we're planting some seeds today. Yet we also wanted to invite our listeners today to see the process of asking questions, of going around the circle, of getting feedback, and we'll see what unfolds, as this is something that I imagine we'll be looking to launch something in May. And so with that, Suanne, I would like to invite you to maybe even share any other thoughts to move it forward, to move a project forward. What would be one or two things that you would almost bring the session to a close? Would it be a timeline? Would it be some top 5 points from today's meeting? Would it be to-do list? What would be some of the ways to bring this broadcast to a close?
So if you're thinking in terms of how we've been mapping out this podcast idea, it would be taking 2 or 3 items, make them into action items, and then follow up with those on the next call or meeting that you have as a group.
So fantastic, folks. So that's a really good takeaway, is that after, when you're coming to the close of the meeting, have a couple of assigned duties or a number of key points that can be written down that can then open up the next meeting. There could be some deliverables. It could be some fun things that I've often want to infuse. What would be fun for people to do over the next week? And what would be a fun type of reply? Would it be writing down the top 3 initiatives, or some ideas for show name, or maybe a sketch of a collateral, or reaching out to Fiverr and having them do something that could just be a fun little exercise, going on Canva to explore it themselves, creating a little video. And so these are ways to encourage your team to be curious and experimentative, and bring a little bit of fun and joy into the project. Because these days we are finding, if it's not fun, why bother do it? And so even if it's something like exercise or something like drooling activities, because there's the benefit, there is the partial sacrifice, yet people who really tend to reach the highest level find a way to make that process enjoyable. Would you agree?
Yes.
As we bring it to a close, what would
Yes.
be your final message to all those creators who have been thinking about doing a project, yet perhaps can use May 1 as a jump off point for a whole new experiment for the upcoming 3, 6, 9 months?
So as a fellow creative, one of the things that often drives us, well, drives me crazy, I should say, is pick one thing and focus.
Fantastic advice. Focus, 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 and then we'll throw in fun, fun, fun. Thank you so much, Sueanne.
Thank you.